to another edition of In and Around Austin. I'm Fred Hudson, and I'm getting ready today to show you how to make a meal for less than $6. Today we're making country-style chicken and dumplings. There are many different kinds of dumplings. In every culture there's a different dumpling. But what we're making today will be based on my mother's recipe, my mother-in-law's recipe, my wife's recipe, my grandmother's recipe. In other words, the recipe all of the people in our family make. And this one looks more like noodles in some ways than it does like dumplings. In addition to the dumplings, we'll be adding some frozen green peas. The reason I use frozen ones is that shelling green peas is never a job one would want to take on. I've done it a few times, but frozen green peas have a beautiful green color and they come out just perfectly each time you make them. What we'll be doing is putting them on top of the dumplings to give them more flavor, more nutrition, and more color. Along with the main dish, we will also have a slaw. This slaw, I got an idea for. I got the recipe from a place in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and that place cooks catfish, but in this case we're adding the slaw to our chicken and dumplings dish. First of all, it will be a cabbage slaw, but added to it some grated carrots, some grated bell peppers, or other kinds of peppers you might want to use. I use a Mexican poblano pepper, and it adds a lot of good zest and flavor to it. Along with that, I'll be adding some elotes. That means green corn, and it's corn cut off the cob and then sauteed to add to our salad. I call this a salad because even though it's a slaw, it has other characteristics of a salad. Along with this, we'll have a dressing, a honey mustard dressing like the one I had at the restaurant, but of course my own touches added to it. I'll put some local honey and some coarsely ground mustard, and that with the other spices make it into something I think you'll really enjoy. Something I want to point out is that around Austin there are many grocery stores that offer excellent food for low prices. This is generally true across the United States, but here in Austin particularly, you can go in to places that understand that you don't always want to cook tender steak or something like that. What we'll be showing you is good, satisfying meals for under $6. So let's get started. First of all, we'll get the water boiling for the dumplings. We'll set them on the stove at a medium heat. We'll have high heat until the water boils, and then we'll be cooking mainly with the medium heat. Turn on hot water and get approximately 4 cups. Fill it up, take it over, put it in the pot. We're using a small pot, cooking for 2 people. Now we're going to start on the dumplings. We're going to make using standard baking flour, white flour. You could add whole wheat if you prefer. I'm putting 2 cups of flour here. Now I'm putting about 2 teaspoons full of salt. A lot of people like to measure exactly. Only when I'm baking bread do I measure exactly. I have about a tablespoon of baking powder. Now let's stir that up. Dry ingredients are together. Now, like I say, these are somewhat like noodles. If you don't put oil in them, and enough oil, and we're going to put about 2 tablespoons full. If you don't put enough oil, they will be tough. So here we'll go in that 2 tablespoons of oil. Now we're ready to mix it. taking it over here to the mixer, making it secure right there. Secure this way with a hook. We'll start the mixing. We'll add a little bit of water, about a quarter of a cup. The mixer will gather that up into a nice little ball. And while that's finishing, this is dry, and flour this whole cutting board here. We'll be laying the dumplings out on this. So we're finished mixing over here. Gather it up to a nice little ball here. Some people vary the amount of oil to make this moister. But we're going to spread it out here so that it's about an inch thick. I'm sorry, about a half inch thick. We'll keep a lot of flour on them. The flour adds to the broth of the dish. Roll this out. The objective is not to make them too thin, and you don't have to make them exactly rectangular to make good dumplings. We may make them of this length. Here we're keeping the width of them more or less regular, but there's no exactness here at all. Once they're in the dish, we'll not worry about that part of it at all. Dinner for two. We basically just let them sit for a while and start boiling, keep them on a fairly high temperature, and now we're getting ready. Straighten the pot up there, make sure it's getting the benefit of all the heat. Now we'll start it boiling. This will boil about 20 minutes. Right now we're going to start the chicken though. I'll be using extra virgin olive oil. Among other places, they suggest that people never use olive oil for cooking. But in the Mediterranean countries, they do use olive oil for most everything. And the result seems to be healthier people. What I'm going to do first here is put in 3 chicken tenders for the white meat lovers. Then 2 chicken thighs for those of us who are more interested in taste and texture than appearance. These will cook pretty quickly, so we want to move the heat down on them. The thighs are entire. The chicken tenders are skinless, boneless. In both cases, they're a quantity of meat that is more than enough for 2 people. Okay, I've taken this down a few notches so that it's not so hot. What I'm going to do when I get through is take this entire pan and pour it into the dumplings. First of all, we're going to take and season these I always like coarse pepper, and this little grinder makes it coarse for us. I take about a teaspoon of salt for this amount of chicken. You can vary the amount of salt relative to your own tastes and your own dietary needs. I like to use garlic powder. We could use fresh garlic here, but the garlic powder really accomplishes what I want in the taste of this chicken. Now the chicken breasts, tenders, need to cook about 1/3 the amount as the chicken thighs do. So I'm just going to leave them in here going together for about 20 minutes while the dumplings cook. Cover them and let them simmer. Make sure dumplings are coming along over here. They're boiling the way I want them to boil. Don't want to be stirring them, I'll knock them apart. But we're ready to turn them down and let them simmer too. We already have a little bit of salt in the water, salt in the dumplings themselves, but I'm going to put a little more salt for the pot, as they say. A little bit of pepper in as we go to give us that little brightness of taste, and I also put garlic powder as I go. Let's keep that down at a fairly low temperature as we keep the chicken that way as well. Okay, I'd like also to start the green peas right now. These we put in as we wish, not to mix around in the dish, but to give it both color, taste, texture, and nutrition. We'll cook this in some boiling water, not a very long time, and then we'll cut it off. I put a little bit of salt in there, not a lot, and a little bit of garlic powder too, mainly letting them get back to a boil and to cook just enough to get that bright green color. Okay, we've got this all going. We'll do something else now. Next we're going to make the slaw. Chicken and dumplings are simmering. We're going to make the slaw. This is a cabbage-based slaw, and I need half of this head of lettuce. I'll cut it in two here. Okay, we generally don't want this stem in here. Cut it out. Discard that. Now we're ready to make the slaw cuts. Now, some people might shred their slaw in a processor of some kind, but what we'll do is cut off some edges here and then start cutting it very thinly with this very sharp knife. Cut up the entire head here.